Well, surprise, surprise, Rachel Maddow appears to be out at MSNBC in the near future. This is interesting. This has been an underreported story. I haven't seen many headlines about this at all. In fact, if anything, it's being misreported. But take a look. This is in the New York Post. They say, MSNBC staffers are panicking over the direction of the left-leaning news network under newly minted President Rashida Jones, fearing that she's gearing up for a costly and potentially disastrous battle with CNN, the Post has learned. Staffers say recent meetings with Jones and her boss, NBCUniversal news chief Cesar Conde, have focused on hard news, with the execs boasting of ratings wins over CNN on breaking stories, such as this summer's congressional hearings on the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. That makes some employees nervous that MSNBC isn't adequately focused on shoring up its primetime lineup of opinion-focused shows that draw on the most loyal viewers. The issue burst into the open last month when news leaked that Rachel Maddow, the network star, had been negotiating a new contract and had threatened to leave. Rashida's love is in hard news, an insider said, pointing to the exec's past role guiding MSNBC's daytime news coverage and NBC news coverage. She doesn't really get what primetime does. Maddow ended up inking a broader deal that was worth a whopping $30 million a year through 2024, according to the Daily Beast, which cited anonymous sources. It will let her develop projects across the network and also allow her to step aside from hosting her 9 p.m. primetime show within the next year. Whoa, so Maddow's gone within the next year. Whoa, talk about burying the lead in a story. So listen, I despise Rachel Maddow. Rachel Maddow went, from in the Bush years talking about how terrible war is. In the Obama years, she even held him accountable over Afghanistan and was seemingly a voice of reason, to slowly but surely becoming a rah-rah Democrat, partisan hack, didn't support Bernie over Hillary by any stretch of the imagination, and then became a full-on Russiagate conspiracy theorist lunatic in the Trump era, and got her best ratings while pushing complete and utter nonsense. So I'm not a fan of Rachel Maddow. She was by far and away the most highly rated show on MSNBC. And what they're saying is, not only is she gone within the year, which is shocking, but also the new head of MSNBC wants to change the direction of the network to be more like CNN. And in their mind, they say that's more hard news. Hilarious, by the way, to call that hard news. Now, another interesting point, they say, they were bragging about the ratings during the summer's congressional hearings on the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Yeah, but the reason why more people went to MSNBC for that than CNN is because MSNBC was supposed to give the more opinionated take on that, the more pro-democratic version of that, an anti-Trumpist version of that. That's why more people went there. So they're misdiagnosing why people went there for the hearings. They're saying, we're beating CNN on a breaking news topic, on a hard news issue. No, you were beating them on your bread and butter of we are more the rah-rah Democrat network. We're more of the partisan network. It's amazing to me that they misdiagnosed that, but they misdiagnosed that. So here's my main takeaway. This is going to be an even bigger disaster than it's already been. So for MSNBC to say we're going to be more hard news like CNN, what they're really saying is we're now going to move to being more aggressively neutral. Because that's what CNN is. CNN is pro-establishment across the board, and they have a neutrality bias. So they try their best to say, Democrats say this is their position, and Republicans say this is their position. And I'm just going to tell you what both their positions are and pretend like I'm above the fray. And I have no real opinions, and I have no real ideology. Well, as I've told you guys a million times, that is not possible. Everybody has an ideology. Everybody has a filter through which they view the world. And either you're going to have people who are open and honest and upfront with their perspective with you, or people who are going to try to hide it and effectively lie by omission. And so CNN is a mess. CNN is a joke. And their ratings are not great. Leave it to MSNBC to say, we're going to take on a fight with the number 2 network in the country to try to beat them, and so we can become number 2 in the country. Why wouldn't you try to become number 1 in the country? How about that? Why wouldn't you try to have a new model, a new mold, a new approach to get to number 1 in the country? Well, They wouldn't do that because what does it take to get to number one in the country? If you were actually a left network that represented left beliefs, like actual ideological commitment to left policies, then you have a chance. Then you have a shot. And, that's left new media is sort of that ecosystem. And there is an audience there. There is a market there that's been waiting forever for that. And it's never going to get served. And the reason's very simple. Because MSNBC, these are corporations. The big cable news networks are corporations. And so if you have true lefties on air, by their very nature, they will threaten the profits of that system. By their very nature, they're against the corporate rule and the manufacturing of consent. And so they don't want to undermine their profit margin. They don't want to undermine their total pro-establishment grasp. So you'd never have lefties who are really advocating for left ideas. You'd never have very aggressively pro-Medicare for all or free college or living wage or getting money out of politics or end the wars types on TV. And it's a goddamn shame because this is how you get the manufacturing of consent, because now the spectrum of debate, the spectrum of thoughts that are thinkable in mainstream media are, you could either be right-wing enough to defend the Republicans and love the Republicans and love Trump, or you could be left-wing enough to defend the corporate Democrats like Kamala Harris, and that's as far left as you're allowed to go. And that's where we are. So the deranged Russiagate conspiracy theorist is stepping down within the year. That's amazing. And there will only be a further implosion, because if MSNBC tries to be more like CNN, which is aggressively neutral and vapid, well, that might even be worse than just being rah-rah Democratic Party. And I hate rah-rah Democratic Party. I hate rah-rah Republican Party. I hate the aggressive fake neutrality. But probably they found their niche in rah-rah Democratic Party. And if you get rid of that and become more aggressively neutral, more pro-establishment, more like CNN, number one, I think you're going to lose that fight in the long run to CNN because they are the place to go for the neutral news. But number two, you're taking your most ardent viewers and telling them don't watch us anymore. And that's what's going to happen. I think the best approach would be a gradual shift to a true lefty network. But like I said, that by its very nature, that threatens power and that threatens capital. And so they'd never allow that, ever. But in terms of going that direction the right way and getting a bigger audience, I think you could become number one that way. I think you could beat Fox News that way. But I won't hold my breath because they're literally saying we would just want to be more like CNN. We want to fight for that number two slot, which is probably the saddest thing I've ever heard. Literally not even playing to win. Literally. We're playing to be number two. Imagine the massive cuck mindset that you have to go in that direction, to be that way, to already, hey, I'm resigned, I'm never going to get number one. Resign to that fact. So pathetic. Well, be aggressively vapid and neutral, and you won't get far, so I'll be watching.